bracketology update for the Kentucky Wildcats, probably one of the final two that we're going to do here before we actually get the bracket next Sunday. Can you believe that it's already almost Selection Sunday? Very, 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 very excited about this time of year. And look, Kentucky in a couple of these bracketology predictions that have been updated, they get some interesting draws. So let's go ahead and walk through some of these. I'm actually going to shout out our guy, Tristan Ferris. I would highly encourage you guys to go follow him on Twitter at TristanUDA. He does an excellent job writing at Kentucky Insider and A Sea of Blue. This article that I'm going to roll through here is his over at Kentucky Insider. We have him on the show just about every week. Please go check this out. I'll probably drop a link to this in the description. I hope I don't forget because he does excellent work over there at Kentucky Insider. So let's walk through some of the projections that he's noticed, which are kind of the big three. Whenever I write for SEC stuff, I normally talk about bracketology with these three projections in mind: CBS Sports, ESPN, and NCAA.com. There are several others out there that are probably either just as accurate or maybe more accurate. You can go to Bracket Wag to kind of see all of the different brackets that you can take a look at. If you're ever curious about what is going on outside of some of these major companies and what they're projecting, again, bracketw.a.g is an excellent place to go. So CBS Sports, I want to start this one off here because it's at the top, currently has Kentucky projected as a 7 seed. And as of right now, I'm going to go check it just to make sure that they have not updated it. Can confirm Kentucky is, as of this morning at 6:13, a 7 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament, playing in the South region. So we've talked on this podcast before about how important it is Kentucky stays away from the 1 seeds. The 2 seeds as well, I think, are definitely threatening. I just think that right now, with the matchups that Kentucky has with some of these teams on that one line, considering Kentucky has already lost 2-3 of them, it could be a little ugly if Kentucky has to end up playing as like a 5 and playing a 1 seed in the round of 32. In the Sweet 16, rather, I should say. It's much better for me, I think, if Kentucky ends up getting in that middle as a 6 seed, because their draw could end up being really, really solid to get all the way to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. And I'm not saying, like, they're just going to breeze through everybody because it's Kentucky. I'm not talking from that perspective. I'm saying from a matchup perspective, I feel more comfortable with some of those things I'm going to get to in a second. As a 7 seed, though, Jerry Palm has Kentucky playing against number 10 West Virginia in the round of 64. They would then be facing off against Gonzaga in the second round. That would be in Sacramento. It's so weird how the South region has a part of the region playing in Sacramento, California. Doesn't make sense to me, but all right, that's cool. Other notables in this region, the number 1 seed, Alabama, probably want to stay as far away from them as possible. Gonzaga, obviously a really solid team that Kentucky has already lost to this year. That would be a difficult matchup. This would be tough. And then your 3 seed would be Kansas State, who would probably get out of their little region of the bracket, region with San Diego State, USC, and Toledo. I mean, Kansas State could, I'm not saying they could walk out of it easily. I'm just saying that they could get out of it. A&M and Indiana are the other 5 and 4 seeds that are relevant in this one. I think Oral Roberts, though, is the team that I do not want to see in the tournament. They are the 12 seed in this little projection here. They would be facing off against Texas A&M. The problem with Oral Roberts, and I meant to talk about this the other day, I meant to talk about teams that I don't want to see in the NCAA tournament. I actually did a segment on this last year, if you guys remember. Oral Roberts is just an incredibly solid team. They have depth, they've got experience, but most importantly, they've got one of the most talented guards in all of college basketball, and that's Max Abmas. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He is one of the most, he's one of the offensively most, how do I phrase this? He's very efficient offensively. He's also one of the best free throw shooters in the country. He shoots 91.9% from the foul line. His effective field goal percentage is 55.1, and he gets buckets. He's averaging 22 points per game so far this season. And Oral Roberts also has the nation's longest win streak at 17 out of the Summit League. They just won the Summit League tournament, took down North Dakota State, the conference championship game. They beat their team 92-58. Now, North Dakota State is terrible at basketball. They're 214th nationally in KenPom. But they beat them and just blew them out of the water. So logic tells you that if they can beat that bad of a team that bad, they're probably on pace and caliber-wise very similar to a team like Texas A&M, like an inconsistent Indiana, like a San Diego State, maybe like a Kentucky if you get them at the right time. We all know what happened last year. Need I say more? This CBS Sports projection, I'm not saying, oh, I don't like it because it's wrong. I'm saying I don't like it because the matchups are intimidating, I think, for your average Kentucky fan. That's my thought on that. If you disagree with that, you can leave that in the comments below. The ESPN one, I think, is a little bit more interesting. In the Midwest region, according to Joe Lunardi, the Wildcats will land as a 6th seed. They would be taking on either Penn State or Oklahoma State in the first round of the NCAA tournament. If I'm not mistaken, Penn State actually is like soaring right now. Like they've won several games. Yeah, they've won 5 out of their last 6 games. They lost in the Big Ten tournament by 1 point. Oh, no, excuse me, that game hasn't played yet. I'm an idiot. I'm just looking at a projection. I can't read. They are the worst team in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. But outside of that, offensively, they're one of the most efficient teams in the nation. So they don't grab boards, probably because they're very short. Yep, they are very short. But they offensively, they can get out and they can hurt you. Not get out and run. They're just very efficient in the half court. So I think, man, you look at Kentucky's draw there as a 6th seed. You play a 3 seed Marquette, who I've been consistent with this season. It's not anything to do with Marquette. I'm just saying, like, I think Kentucky can get out of something like that with a team like Marquette. And then you're facing off against probably Arizona as your 2 seed there. I don't know. I like this bracket. If you end up getting to the Elite 8 and you face off against the 1 seed Kansas, that's a team you can beat. I know that Kentucky can beat that team. It's a very, very, very solid Kansas team right now. But, man, I think the Wildcats, if they get a second shot with the way that they've been playing, have the momentum, have all the mental confidence, that's a team Kentucky can beat. Heck, Missouri could beat that Kansas team coming out of the gate. And Missouri's the 8th seed, technically, in this projection. I'm very excited to talk on Sunday about what some of these matchups look like for real. The final projection I want to get to here is the NCAA.com projection. Holy cow, is this bracket interesting? Is this region interesting for Kentucky? So according to Andy Katz and NCAA.com, Kentucky would be playing in the West region of the bracket as the 6th seed. I'm about to sneeze. I'm going to try and fight it off. This bracket, and to quote Tristan Ferris in this article, sign me up for this bracket right now. This is by far the easiest draw that Kentucky has had in any projection that I've seen as the 6th seed. Everything that I've discussed about what Kentucky's season could potentially look like in the postseason with them staying away from the 1, this is it right here. And weirdly enough, it's like one of the only teams that Kentucky has not played on that 1 seed line. Houston is in this region. Kentucky as a 6th seed would be facing off against Clemson or Boise State. I think Kentucky could beat either of those teams. I'm just going to pull up Clemson here real quick. I don't believe that Clemson, they're not offensively or defensively great at either thing. Brad Brunell has been really solid, I think, on the defensive end throughout his time at Clemson. They are projected to lose to NC State in the ACC tournament today, actually, so we'll keep an eye on that. 22-9 are the Clemson Tigers. That could be an interesting matchup. Boise could be an interesting matchup. I know they've had to pick up a couple of wins here recently to kind of stay on that 11 seed line. I think that's the game Kentucky should be favored in. Wait, let's not be weird. I think that's a game Kentucky could be favored in. They then take on Kansas State, likely, who would have to face off against Vermont. Kansas State, very solid Big 12 team. Could Kentucky beat them? Yeah, absolutely they could beat them. Kansas State, very solid defensively, but the problem with the Wildcats rather is that they're short. They're very undersized. Now, sure, they push the pace, but I think it gives the question here. Kentucky's kind of thrived at getting to the rim with Jacob Toppin, Antonio Reeves, Oscar Tshiebwe. If they don't take 500,000 mid-range jumpers in that game, I mean, that's a game Kentucky could win. And I'm not saying win it by 500,000. I'm saying like win it by 4 or 5. I'm just trying to be realistic here. If you get to the Sweet 16, here are the teams that you could be playing. Iowa, West Virginia, UCLA, and Eastern Washington. And you may say, Lance, the most likely outcome there is UCLA. But the problem with the Bruins is that they're good, and they beat Kentucky earlier this year. I don't know if you saw it, but if I'm not mistaken, Jalen Clark, their lead guard, is out for the season with an Achilles injury. He was one of the best perimeter defenders in the country, period. He was one of the best on-ball defenders in the nation, and they lost him. They lost their lead piece. And I'm not saying, oh, well, then they're just going to fall apart here all the way down the stretch. No, the problem here is that UCLA does have quite a bit of experience. They've got Tiger Campbell, who's been there for 35 years. They got Jaquez, who's been there for 500,000 years. They've got Amari Bailey, who's a really solid freshman for them. David Singleton is another senior for them. I mean, they've got a nice blend there. But Jalen Clark, man, I mean, he was one of the best defenders in the country, was one of the best when it came to just picking pockets, man. I believe he was top 10 in steal percentage last time I checked when I was looking through KenPom stuff. He was kind of the motor for that team. Now, you've got another point guard in Tiger Campbell that can really make things go, right? Who's a good scorer. You've also got Jaquez, who is currently the second best player in the country according to KenPom. So it's not like UCLA is just completely void of talent past Clark, by no means. I'm just saying whenever you lose a guy like him, you have to adjust your rotation late. You start to find yourself in these one elimination style brackets, and you're facing off against an Iowa team or a West Virginia team that's been really weird in the way that they played recently. According to KenPom, West Virginia, who is 19-13, is the 16th best team in the country. The Mountaineers, according to KenPom, are still efficiency-wise and numbers-wise a top 20 team in college basketball. They've won 3 straight. They've beaten Iowa State, Kansas State, now Texas Tech in the Big 12 tournament. By the way, shout out to what's going out over at Tech. It's just really strange to see what's going on over there. But anyway, this draw, man, you get past Clemson, Boise State, Kansas State, or Vermont, and I'm not saying that we just look past them. I'm just saying relative to some of these other matchups Kentucky could have out the gate, this seems more doable. Now, I'm not saying Kentucky's going to do it. They could lose by 40 to Boise State or Clemson. Who knows? I don't know. But what I'm saying here is if we're looking at this, trying to be realistic with the matchups, I like our chances against the 11th seed. I like our chances against Kansas State. I like our chances against whoever comes out of that bottom portion of the region. And then you look up to the top, Houston, Samford, Arkansas, NC State, St. Mary's, Southern Miss, Xavier, and Yale. I'm sure we could take a deeper dive into what Xavier's done this season. St. Mary's has done this season. They got blown out, if I'm not mistaken, in the WCC championship against Gonzaga. Southern Miss has been an interesting team this season. Arkansas is a team that beat Kentucky once, lost to them again. Can Kentucky beat them a second time in a row? That would be interesting if the Razorbacks were to get past the Cougars in the top half of that region. NC State is a team that I don't think we need to look past. Samford would probably give Houston a little bit of a fight, and then that would be all said and done there. If the Cougars are facing off against the Wildcats in the Elite Eight, that could be a fun game. That Houston team is good, though. I mean, they are just about as solid as it gets. Top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Of course, the problem with Houston is that their strength of schedule is not the strongest in the world. You look at their net ranking, they're first, but their SOS is 42nd nationally, and their non-conference was 78th. Sure, they played Alabama. Sure, they played a couple of other interesting teams, like Oregon, like St. Mary's. But overall, like Virginia as well, but overall, you look at the quality of play in the American Athletic. I'm not going to say it's bad. I'm just going to say it's not where you want to be if you're trying to make a title run, or at least, let me rephrase that because that's wrong. The perception from the media, analysts, and fans is going to be, for a team like Houston, you play in a weaker conference, you don't play in a Power 6 conference, prove to us that you're capable of playing on the level of some of these other schools who have had to battle it out with all of these other talented programs in their respective Power 6 leagues. By no means am I saying Houston is a bad team. They may easily be the best team in the country. I'm just saying they have not been as tested as some of these other teams. Does that mean they're bad? No. Does that mean they're fraudulent? No. I'm just saying, Houston, I'm intrigued to see how they perform in this one elimination tournament here when they get to face off consistently against better competition. And I say better competition. They may say, well, we played good team. McNeese State, Tulsa, UCF, SMU, Temple, Wichita State, Cincinnati, Memphis, Tulane, East Carolina. I hate to say it, those are solid programs. They're not as good as what you could find in the Big 12, in the ACC, in the SEC. You know, these different Power 6 conferences that have more solid programs. I don't want to talk in a circle here. I'll just say I'm intrigued by the Houston Cougars, who are elite statistically. How they face off against some other programs will be interesting. Look at what they are doing in the CBS Sports bracketology. Houston would face off against what would likely be Auburn, then Duke or Tennessee, then Missouri or UConn, then Creighton or Texas. There you go. If you make it to the Final Four after that, you're a good team. You could be a good team beforehand because, crazy things happen in March, but we'll see what happens. So that's my thoughts on Chris Ledlum. That's my thoughts on Kentucky basketball in the latest bracketology projections. If you've got any thoughts on where the Wildcats may land in the postseason, what you think about where they could be matched up, who they could be matched up against. I saw some of you in the comments recently discussing, okay, what would be a good or a bad matchup. I agree. I meant to respond. I agree with one of you. I think Purdue would be not fun, to put it blankly, to put it straightforward. Yeah, but there's some other teams that I think Kentucky would probably feel a little bit more comfortable taking on. So if you got any thoughts on that, YouTube comments, hit them up, or you can hit me on the socials.